Have you ever wondered how much a single word is worth? Most people think words are free. But for Julian Vane, one word cost exactly $3.5 billion. Imagine standing at the very top of a skyscraper. You own the building. You own the private jet waiting at the airport. You think you are a god among men. Then, in 1 second, it all vanishes. This is not just a story about a bad business deal. This is a story about a man who forgot that the person holding a mop might be the person holding his entire future. If you stay with me until the end of this video, I will reveal the one specific word Julian said that destroyed his life. I will also share a secret trick that real billionaires use to test if someone is actually a leader or just a bully. You do not want to miss the moment the cameras caught his face when he realized his mistake. The scene was a boardroom on the 80th floor. It was quiet. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh coffee. Julian Vane sat at the head of a long glass table. He was wearing a suit that cost more than most people make in a year. Across from him sat an old man in a gray work uniform. The man had dirt on his hands and a bucket by his feet. Julian looked at him with pure disgust. He didn't see a human being. He saw a nuisance. He let out a loud, cold laugh that echoed against the windows. He leaned forward and whispered one word into the old man's ear. It was a word meant to humiliate. It was a word meant to crush a soul. Julian thought he was winning. He had no idea he had just signed his own death warrant. Fast forward just 48 hours later, the news cameras are everywhere. The stock market is in a panic. A massive headline flashes across every television screen in the country. It reads, "Vane Industries files for bankruptcy. The company that ruled the city for 20 years is dead." Julian Vane is seen leaving the building with a cardboard box. He has no jet. He has no bodyguards. He is completely alone. How did this happen? How did a titan of industry lose it all in a weekend? The answer lies with a man named Arthur Sterling. Arthur Sterling is not like other rich men. He is a ghost in the business world. He is a billionaire who never shows his face in magazines. He doesn't care about fancy suits or expensive watches. Before Arthur signs a check for a merger, he does something strange. He performs a character test. He believes that you can tell everything about a person by how they treat someone who can do absolutely nothing for them. He wants to know who you are when you think the important people aren't looking. Why would a man at the top of the world throw everything away for one moment of pride? Let's go back to the beginning of the week and see how the trap was set. On the outside, Vane Industries looked like a giant. It was a massive company with a famous name, but inside it was rotting. The company was bleeding cash like an open wound. They were losing millions of dollars every single day. Julian Vane had made too many bad bets. He had spent money the company didn't have. Now, the banks were circling like sharks. He was only 1 week away from losing everything. His only hope was the Sterling merger. If Arthur Sterling signed that deal, Julian would get $3.5 billion. It was the only thing that could keep his empire alive. Without that money, the lights would go out forever. But Julian didn't act like a man who was in trouble. He acted like a king. He lived a life of extreme luxury. He owned 3 yachts. He had a collection of sports cars that he never even drove. His ego was even bigger than his bank account. Julian truly believed he was better than everyone else. He walked through his office and never looked his employees in the eye. To him, the people who cleaned the floors or answered the phones were invisible. He called his junior staff units instead of using their names. He once fired a delivery driver just because the man's shoes squeaked on the floor. He loved to make people feel small because it made him feel big. Julian spent his days barking orders and insulting his staff. He thought his power came from his money. He didn't realize that his power was actually very fragile. He was so busy being arrogant that he didn't see the trap closing in on him. Then, the phone rang. It was the call Julian had been waiting for. Arthur Sterling's office was on the line. They had a message. Arthur was coming to the headquarters in person. He wanted to see the operation with his own eyes before he signed the papers. Julian was thrilled. He thought he just needed to put on a show for one day to get his billions. He had no idea that the test had already started. Arthur Sterling knew that a boardroom meeting would only show him a mask. He didn't want to see the CEO Julian Vane was pretending to be. He wanted to see the real man. So, Arthur arrived early. He didn't come in a limousine. He didn't have a security team. Instead, he arrived at the back entrance at 4 o'clock in the morning. He was wearing a faded blue jumpsuit with a name tag that simply said Artie. He carried a heavy toolbox and a mop bucket. The billionaire looked exactly like a tired man just trying to earn a living. Nobody at the front desk looked twice at him. To the high-powered executives, he was just part of the furniture. The first meeting between the two men happened near the elevators. Julian Vane was walking fast, shouting into his gold-plated phone. He was angry about a delayed shipment. Artie was mopping the floor nearby. As Julian walked past, Artie accidentally bumped his bucket. A tiny bit of soapy water splashed onto the tip of Julian's polished leather shoes. The world seemed to stop. Julian froze. He hung up the phone and looked down at his shoe. Then he looked at Artie. His face turned a deep, angry red. He didn't see an elderly man making a small mistake. He saw an object that had inconvenienced him. Julian didn't just get annoyed. He exploded with toxic rage. He screamed so loud that people in the nearby offices poked their heads out to see what was happening. Julian didn't stop at screaming. He wanted to humiliate this janitor. He told Artie that his shoes cost more than Artie's house. Then, he decided to play a cruel game. Julian told Artie to put down the mop. He pointed to a pile of trash in the corner that had fallen out of a bin. He ordered Artie to pick up every single piece of paper using only his mouth. Julian stood over him, laughing and filming it on his phone to show his friends later. Artie did as he was told. He remained calm. He watched Julian's eyes. He saw the rot inside the company. He saw that Julian didn't just hate his staff. He enjoyed their pain. As the day went on, the abuse got worse. Julian kept Artie away from his actual maintenance work. He forced Artie to stand outside his office door like a human coat rack. He made Artie wait in the rain to hold an umbrella over his car, even though Artie wasn't a valet. While Artie performed these humiliating tasks, he kept his ears open. He heard Julian talking to his lawyers. He heard Julian planning to steal the pensions of the workers once the merger was finished. He heard Julian calling the people of the city dumb sheep. Every time Julian insulted the man in the blue jumpsuit, he was actually insulting the only person who could save him. Julian thought he was the cat and Artie was the mouse. He had no idea the mouse was actually a lion. The day grew longer, and the office felt heavy with fear. Most employees kept their heads down, terrified to catch Julian's eye. But there was one person who was different. Her name was Sarah. She was a secretary who had worked for the company for. The pain was sharp, but Artie didn't scream. He looked up at Julian and spoke quietly. He said, "Sir, you have been very unkind today. A simple please or sorry would go a long way. Is it so hard to be human?" Julian leaned down until his face was inches from Artie's. He had a wicked smile on his face. He whispered a single word. It wasn't a curse word. It was something much worse. It was a word that showed Julian believed Artie was less than a person. That one word was insignificant. Julian walked away, feeling powerful. He didn't realize that insignificant man was about to take everything he owned. Julian Vane stood on the sidewalk and watched the gold letters of his name being scraped off the building. He had lost his money, his cars, and his pride. But the biggest thing he lost was his future. He sat on the same bench where Sarah had once shared her sandwich with a stranger. Now Julian was the one who looked invisible. He realized too late that power is not about how much money you have in the bank. True power is about how you treat people who can do nothing for you. He had called a billionaire insignificant because he was blinded by a blue jumpsuit. The story did not end with the bankruptcy of Vane Industries. Arthur Sterling knew that the company's failure wasn't the fault of the workers. It was the fault of the man at the top. Arthur decided to buy the remains of the business and start something new. He didn't look for a famous CEO with a fancy degree to run it. Instead, he made a phone call to a small apartment across town. He called Sarah. He told her that he needed someone who understood the value of kindness and hard work. He hired her to be the new director of operations. Under her leadership, the company began to thrive again, but this time, everyone was treated with respect. The moral of this story is simple but powerful. Character is what you do when you think no one important is watching. You never know who is behind a mask, and you never know when a small act of cruelty will come back to haunt you. Julian Vane learned that lesson the hard way. He learned that one word can indeed cost $3.5 billion. If you believe that everyone deserves respect, no matter what their job is, give this video a thumbs up. If you enjoyed seeing an arrogant bully get exactly what he deserved, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. We post stories of instant karma and justice every single week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen a boss or a bully get instant karma in real life? What happened? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay humble because you never know who is holding the mop.